YouTube. It's Thursdays and week 14, I think, and the topic this week is in the workplace. So here is my video and all the things that I have to say about that. Drew has been transitioned or gone through all of that for like 2 years now, so this is kind of like a history of Drew, if you will. Early in his transition, when he first started T and before he had surgery and then during surgery, he was funded through his graduate program that he was in at that time, so he wasn't working. In the graduate program, everybody knew, so he was out as trans in the sense that everybody kind of was around during the process of him starting T and having surgery and all of that. That I went okay. There was some professors that he kind of felt better about it with than other professors. But for the most part, everybody was pretty cool with it, or at least, cool to him about it. And then one thing about this is that he had to do an internship for his program, and he did put off his internship for a semester, like he did a semester later, so that he could be on T longer, so that way he was read as more visibly male, so that his presentation was more male, and he didn't have to be out or have to have the explanation of his transness to everybody in his internship, which he felt like was the most appropriate thing given the field. He was out to like 4 people or so at that in the internship, and that went fine. In his most recent job that he was out to 2 people who were his close friend who knew him before pre-T and all of that. So he was out to her, and then he was out to another guy. He came out to another guy during as he got to know him through work, because they started to kind of date briefly, and so he told him about his transness. And they're still good friends now. So 2 people knew in his last job, and because they were friends, it went fine. And his kind of philosophy, as far as that goes, is that there's no really need for people to know, which I know a lot of other people on the channel have talked about this. There's no real need for someone to know, so he doesn't really tell them until he feels like they've come to a closeness in their friendship. So like if they're just coworkers, not a big deal. Whatever. But then if their co-working relationship starts to move more towards friendship, where they are like both sharing more personal details and things like that, then he, might tell them at that point, feels comfortable with them and all that stuff. So yeah, when they're just his coworker, not so much. But when they move from his coworker into his like personal life as a friend, then he usually tells them that he's trans because he's out as trans to his people that are in his friend group. So, and then I guess just a few other things, to note about the way he feels, or the way he's explained to me that he feels about this, is like at first he had a lot of anxiety about being out, or like people knowing that he was trans, or did they know or did they not know, or were they perceiving him the way he wanted them to when he was pre-T and early in taking T and before surgery and all of that. But then he said like as he's like gotten farther and farther away from that in time, over 2 years now, it's just like never in his thought. Like, he's really comfortable with his presentation, and so he just doesn't ever even think about it really. Like he said earlier this evening to me when we were talking about it, like he'll meet people and it's like he doesn't even think to tell them, or like that it would ever even, like it would come up. It's just not on his radar because he feels so comfortable as male and with his presentation and how people will read him now. So that's really good that he got through that kind of anxiety. His insurance didn't cover any of his surgeries or his T or anything like that. It did cover the counseling that he went to get the little letter that says this person is a boy. So it did cover that to a really lowered the cost a lot for that. So that was good. But insurance didn't pay for any of the other things. And also a note on this, he lived in Illinois when he was going through this process, and we live in Minnesota now, and both Illinois and Minnesota have anti-discrimination policies and hate crime legislation and all of that, so that if someone in a workplace or a company or a place of business or whatever was to discriminate him for being trans in any way, that's against the law legally in these states. So he's covered as far as that goes, which is really awesome. And I might be wrong about this, so someone correct me, but I think Minnesota was the first state to include transgendered people in. It's definitely one of the early ones. If it wasn't the first, but there was a librarian here, and I heard her speak. Her first name's Deborah. I can't remember her last name. Um, she was a librarian here, and she transitioned like over the summer. So like she was Mr. Someone, and then in the summer she came, and the summer happened, and then she came back as Mrs. Someone into like elementary school librarian, and she got fired because of it, and so she sued the state of Minnesota, the school district, and it got appealed, and then anyway, the state of Minnesota ruled that this is unconstitutional, and yeah, so that's how the like things happened in Minnesota. I think if somebody out there knows more about this in Minnesota, I'm new here, so please correct me. So I'm going to just kind of go through the questions that are left. How important do I think that it is for a trans guy to be out at the workplace? Again, I've kind of talked about this in general. I guess this is my answer to a lot of things. I think it's as important as they want it to be. I don't think it's necessary, and other people have said that. It's all a matter of what you're comfortable with. I really like Drew's philosophy. I really support him in not being out as trans to people that he's just working with that are just his coworkers, and then only coming out to people when you feel comfortable with them or when you feel like, hey, this person is more than my coworker and actually my friend. Like, I think that's a really logical process as far as when to out yourself to people that you work with, or just people in general. So I really think that he's got a good game plan as far as that goes. But I totally understand, again, why people might not want to be it anyway, and it all just depends on your identity, and Drew identifies as a queer trans guy, so he's out to our friend group, like I've said many times on this before. So to my coworkers, is he out to my coworkers, or how do I handle that? And that's actually a really interesting, been an interesting point of, tension for us at first, because I didn't understand when I first started dating Drew, I didn't understand the intensity of what it meant for me to out him to someone. And I know I feel extremely stupid because of that. Like, how could I not have thought of that? But because we met and he introduced himself to me as an out trans guy, I thought, oh, he's out, so he's comfortable with people knowing he's trans. Well, that doesn't mean everybody at all times in any situation. It's certain people at certain times in certain circumstances. And so it took me a couple conversations he and I had that were really emotional, where I started to understand, no, I am disrespectful if I do this. This is not okay. This is not my place. So then I kind of got a better understanding of who it's okay for me to tell, how, in what ways I can say, explain his transness, and in what circumstances. So that's been a learning curve for me to understand when it's okay and when it's not okay, and why. And so I work really hard to be respectful about those things with him, because it's not my place, and I understand that now. But I totally admit my failure in the beginning of our relationship as far as that goes, and I think I work really hard now to do better, and be more respectful of him in that way. But then again, that being said, my coworkers are other graduate students in feminist studies, women and gender studies, so they're all really accepting, progressive people who study gender and study sexuality, and in our department, our bathroom, we don't have male bathrooms and female bathrooms. We have unisex bathrooms, specifically because of this. The University of Minnesota has a lot of resources for trans people, and a lot of people on my campus study trans identity and things like that, so we're very not just conscious but also activists as far as these sort of things go. So Drew has told me that he feels really he feels comfortable with me if it arises in the appropriate context, and I trust the person, me outing him to some of my colleagues, because they are people we know are going to be respectful and going to be understanding of his trans identity, and many of them have dated trans people themselves or are trans themselves. So I have a very unique work situation. That's all my time, and I had more to say,